And then I have a feeling, I think this might be everyone that we're going to have today. Commissioner Shattuck McNally might be joining us, but I've heard from a couple of people that they're not coming. So I will go ahead and call the meeting to order and start with roll call. Um, so Vaughn Jones or Kirk will. We heard from Kirk that he will not be here today. Amy Moyer, we have heard from that she will not be here today. John Ring.
Howdy. Howdy.
Hello, good to see you. Um, it's so funny calling roll when I can see everyone's faces on the call. Commissioner Shattuck McNally, hopefully will join us soon. Brett Wolk, hello. Katie McNovak, that's me, hello. And Commissioner Veronica Medina.
Here.
Thank you. All right, so we do meet quorum today. So the first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from March 9th, 2026. Does anyone have anything to discuss related to those meeting minutes?
I don't have anything.
All right. Could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from, is the March 9th or the April, because there's two on here, April 9th.
Um, I had March 9th. Let's see. Man, you're more on it than me today, I think.
I try to be prepared.
I do too.
Doesn't always work out, but I do try.
Um, are you seeing two or
So yes, and in the summary that Courtney had sent out, it shows that it says, oh, you know what? My apologies. They approved the March. So the April, now I've got my, let me see. Um, approved January 26th, okay. April 9th workshop planning. So,
oh, you know what? We canceled the April Leveraging Resources Committee meeting because there was a April 9th full council meeting. Is maybe that's what you're looking at?
um, so these meeting minutes then are from the March 9th.
Yeah, the Leveraging Resources Committee meeting minutes are from March 9th.
Yes.
We
So
didn't.
I move to approve the March 9th meeting minutes.
Awesome. Anyone second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Uh,
All right. Motion carries. Woohoo. And thank you for being eagle-eyed, Veronica.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. Okay, so I have a very quick update on the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. Laura Hickey is not here today, but I just wanted to share, I don't know if we've shared in here yet, that she and Chaska Woiwaka at Forest Restoration Institute are working on developing a training around the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. Um, and we're looking to pilot that training at the Colorado Forest Collaborative Summit later this year. And then the hope for that is that it will, grow over time. We'll be able to offer it in more places. And then also it will have like a train the trainer program so that you can like take the training and then bring it back to your organization and folks in your organization can also learn from it. And yeah, just one more way to get the Forest Resilience Planning Guide out into the world. Brett, do you have any updates on the Forest Resilience Planning Guide or anyone else have anything that's like going on related to that that we should know about?
Yeah, I think that's a good update. Just clarify, we've been
CFRI contracted with Laura Hickey and it's actually another woman that she brought on from her consulting firm too, um, to do this work. So it's kind of outside of the council, but leveraging that. And yeah, it's already with that institute that actually so named Ariana was helping with Katie with the CCC. There's a State Forest Service and CSU Extension sort of training modules that have been going on that we've been bringing it to them on how to use it. So there's lots of places. The summit is one, and there's other places that we're developing trainings and modules for it. I think we're doing really good at messaging. People on the ground are starting to get it and see value in it. I still Chaska and I both still struggle to articulate it more. Like we see the value to the resource allocators, the policymakers, the funders, agency leadership. And it's really clear when we have conversations one-on-one about it, but we have struggled to like articulate it and have that audience really see it as a value on how they can align their programs and like how make it more efficient and better. So I think that's where we're still workshopping, but yeah, we've been doing a lot more thinking about that, um, taking it out. So
Yeah, I've had the same challenge and like noticed the same kind of that aspect of the guide's value. I feel like it's hard to communicate and it's maybe not quite out there yet. Um, it's a tough one.
but I think I think it's there, we're putting out there and I don't feel a need to force it. I think we need to keep working on it, but I'm not, and if it's useful, it's useful. And if it's not, like, I want it to be useful for something, but it is already. So
Yeah, and I'll say I had a for my job at the Colorado Forest Collaboratives Network, I had a table at the Wildland Fire Conference, and we had some forest resilience planning guide hard copies on the table, and those were flying off the shelf. And I talked to a couple of people who were like, "Oh yeah, I was gonna try out this action," and I told them I was like, "Please email me or Laura or anyone from the Leveraging Resources Committee or on the Forest Resilience Planning Guide author team, like please email us and let us know if you use it, how you use it, what you thought, how it was useful. So hopefully we'll hear some stories from people about if and how they're using it in their work.
yeah. And I did see like in this work wildfire watersheds meeting that's happening Friday, like the Forest Resilience Planning Guide is listed as one of the 5 resources that they're talking about and things like that. So it is getting out there. One other quick update, then maybe we can, if you want to move on or talk about it more, but a while ago, I worked with the State Forest Service who hosts the Resilience Planning Guide on the website. Um, and we updated the website a little bit, so it has links to, it's supposed to be more bite size, right? You don't read it front to back. And they broke it up into a little bit more chunks. Um, so that was much thanks to the State Forest Service communications team.
Cool. I like that. Yeah, I think breaking it into chunks is helpful. And then the hard copies, I think, have been helpful too for making it feel a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just like this wall of 100 pages of text, and people are like, what do I do with this?
Yes, yeah. It feels overwhelming at first glance. All right, cool. Anyone else have updates related to the Forest Resilience Planning Guide? Cool. Well, Brett, you offered a perfect segue. I'm also going to give a quick update on the Wildfire and Watershed Initiative for Resilient Colorado. That's the work group. Um, Allie Lurch was not able to be on the call today. She would normally give an update. So I just put together a couple of quick notes from their newsletter. So they have several events coming up. Um, One is the Forest Economy Summit on May 15th in Granby, Colorado, or hybrid. And Brett, is that the one that you were talking about, I assume? Yes. So that is coming up. It'll be from 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. They also have an ongoing webinar series called Creating and Leveraging Funding from the Local Level and Beyond. Um, that's on session 3 of 4, and then they also have recordings. So I'll just put a link in there if anyone is keeping up with that group. We've just kind of been following what they are up to. Um, Brett, do you know anything more about that as far as like what they're using the Forest Resilience Planning Guide for, or is it just kind of a document that they're using as reference as they work on local funding ideas?
Um, I know Amy Moyer is more connected with that group. Um,
She wasn't able to make it today either.
yeah, but it's a little more water centric and she's just been more directly connected. I can look it up if you want in a second. They listed sort of like the state forest action plan and wildfire ready watersheds and some of these sort of like, here's our state foundational documents. And the Forest Resilience Planning Guide was listed as one of those. So I don't know too much more than that.
Okay. Um,
Does anyone else?
Not for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm glad that the guide is getting out there though. That's awesome.
yeah, me too.
Diana, do you?
I don't know a lot about how they're interacting or sharing the guide. I do know that like these some of these events that are coming up that we have Colorado State Forest Service has representation, and so we have folks sitting on some panels and talking about some of those things. So um yeah, I know there's others within the State Forest Service that are more plugged in than I am.
Cool. Well, I'm sure we'll have multiple people at that event, and I'm sure they'll send out a summary. I keep in pretty close touch with Julie Shapiro. She's pretty involved in that, so I can look to her for more updates and stuff too. But that's awesome that they are using the Forest Resilience Planning Guide as one of their core documents. So the main discussion that I wanted to get to today is kind of talking about the future of this committee and thinking in light of the discussions that we've been having at the last couple of Forest Health Council quarterly meetings about kind of the committee structure going forward as far as the broader council goes. Um, so at the most recent Forest Health Council meeting, we kind of talked about moving toward more focused subject matter committees. Maybe they'll be like shorter term, really focused on like developing something like a forest resilience planning guide as a subject matter focused committee. Um, and we also know that the Forest Health Council administration team have limited to capacity, and so we don't want them to have like a million different committees that they're trying to help coordinate. So I am just spitballing here, and I want to start a discussion about this. Um, and we have most of today to do it. But I am throwing out the idea of having this committee sunset as we get toward the end of the summer. We can work together to like make a plan, make sure that we have our existing work keeps going onward. We definitely don't want anything to just die out. Um, and that way we can kind of free up some capacity for people on the committee and also the Forest Health Council administrators to have some more subject matter focused committees, such as some of the recommendations that we have put forth recently, and just have a little bit more time to dive into those. So we don't need to make any decisions today, but I wanted to put that idea out there and see what you guys think of it and also talk about other options if we want other options. Um, but I will leave it at that. Does anyone have any questions, initial reactions? Oh, and I see that Commissioner Shattuck McNally just joined us.
Yeah, I've been
Welcome.
here for a little while. I'm sorry I couldn't get in. I guess I used the wrong link and I was in a budget meeting and it was the Google Meet wasn't, I don't know why that was also in the invitation, so I just had trouble getting in, but
Oh, oops. Yeah, we tried to update the invitation, but maybe there was like a ghost link on there. Sorry that you
well,
got trapped. I'm glad you.
yeah, I just got back from being at the Northern Western Regional Conference and I was speaking on wildfire mitigation and speaking alongside Lahaina and learning a lot of stuff about their work and their mitigation and things. So that was really impactful. My question for you, Katie, is this something that you were thinking, or is this something staff had kind of maybe mentioned? And um, I don't, even if we sunset, how many working groups are they looking at? Because and then the working groups, I think we should have a policy or a criteria about if we have all these different working groups, are they for 2 months, 3 months? If we're sunsetting this, how does that work with how they're sunsetted or the reasonings? It's I could see that they could be starting, stopping, and I'm wondering how I don't want to lose momentum. Sometimes I think it's a good idea to talk about this and um, and bringing up this idea, but I'm also want to be cautious that we don't have a process to um, follow or criteria to kind of in line to kind of make sure it's just not maybe well, someone decides this time to sunset is something that the whole council can agree to when to start or a vote, and would it be something the full council would have to vote on to sunset? I'm wondering what that looks like. A lot of
Yeah.
questions. Sorry.
No, that's okay. And this is a good opportunity for me to provide some more context. So this is something that Courtney and I have been talking about. So Courtney knows that I'm bringing this idea to you all. It's not going to like surprise anybody. So this is something that she and I have been talking about just as we have some conversations behind the scenes. Um, I feel like we've had trouble just because the mission of this committee is so broad. And then we're kind of always talking about like, well, are we coming up with legislative recommendations? Are we coming up with administrative recommendations? How do we make sure that administrative recommendations get done? Do we want to do more project-based things like the Forest Resilience Planning Guide? And just feeling a little bit um, unsure about which direction to take the committee in. And so this was just an idea that we had come up with. When I talk about splitting into, or when I talk about like the Forest Health Council having opportunity now to have more subject matter based committees, that's jumping the gun a little bit. That's not something that like this committee gets to decide. That's a broader Forest Health Council discussion, but I'm using that as a way to provide context for like where we would go next theoretically. And then to answer your question, what Courtney and I had discussed is that we, of course, want everyone on this committee to be on the same page. And so we'll talk about it amongst ourselves. And then if we decide that this is the direction we want to go, we would do a committee vote and then bring that to the full council, and the full council would approve it in at the August quarterly meeting. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So back to the recommendations of what subject matters things, you're just kind of throwing that out there. You're not making, that would be the full Forest Health Council, because I think we're still having that conversation. And
Right,
so I was
correct.
just
Yeah.
wondering
So
what, maybe it sounded like maybe something had been formalized and I wasn't sure, because I don't think we've had that big discussion as a Forest Health Council. We've started to broach it. And so I was just curious about that.
yeah, no, and I'm sorry if I made it sound like that. I'm not trying to jump the gun on any of that, but my vision for this would be that we would kind of bring to the council like, hey, you know, these are our recommendations. We hope that you'll do something with them, but like that's for the full council to decide. And those just kind of give the council some options to work from. And I do want to make sure that hopefully those things don't get lost because we have put a lot of work into those as a committee. So if we were to move forward with this, um, then I want all of us to have a discussion about like what loose ends we want to tie up and what we want the council to know. And so that would be an example of something that we might tell the council, like, hey, don't forget we did all this awesome work. Like, here's some possible directions that we could take it, but that's ultimately up to the council. And yeah, I know Courtney and the rest of the DNR team is working behind the scenes to figure out like how does, if there is a restructuring, what are the formalities of that and the legalities of that, and what kind of processes do we need to go through? So that's not what for us to worry about. But as far as a bigger vision, that's kind of what I would picture.
And I just wanted to flag, we're going to be switching administrations and there might be new staff, maybe. And that could also be something that might influence or change some things. And I just think we should also keep that in the back of our minds that I don't know where that's going. So just for something just to kind of make things even more a little complicated. I appreciate you answering my questions, Katie.
Yeah, totally. I appreciate you asking. And if anyone else has other questions or concerns or thoughts, and I don't want this to be like the only option on the table, it's just something that Courtney and I have been thinking about.
I think it's certainly something to think about, especially with capacity issues. And I also think it's a good point about the two other projects that are done. We want to make sure that's addressed about how we get feedback and how that's maintained. And if we get yearly or 6-month updates and from who and what would that look like, and make sure that those programs don't just get kind of, put down the bottom of the list and forgotten. So I think that was also a good point. So I think something definitely, in administrative recommendations, maybe, that they bring something back or someone brings something back just to talk about those projects and how it's being utilized or how much it's utilized and the outcomes. I think that would be really important. So, guys, there's a lot of work everyone's done, and I think it's important to keep a little bit of energy beneath it to keep it going. Thanks.
Maybe we, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna chime in, yeah, add some thoughts.
Please do.
Yeah, I think I appreciate you bringing this up. I think it came up at our last in-person or hybrid full council meeting that was hosted at CSU in Fort Collins. We talked about, and I think Katie, you, as well as Amy and myself all expressed sort of a desire to change the format of this committee. And I think it goes a little bit to some of the success that you've had, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, on the legislative committee of getting recommendations. We had one that led directly to a bill, the workforce development bill, but there's other ones that have definitely had impact of supporting sort of continuous state programs of forum COSWAP and some of those other things. And I think it was more uncertainty about how this committee, like Katie was saying, works with the legislative committee and trying to clarify some of that. And then also sort of add capacity to the legislative committee. And so right now, my impression, kind of most everything legislative recommendations is sort of funneled under one committee, and then all of the work to learn about those legislative recommendations, policies, all of that happens within that one committee. And I think there could be a scenario where we actually strengthen that by making sort of, instead of one legislative committee, we have maybe, like Katie was saying, 2 or 3 separate subject matter committees that dig into issues that we want to develop legislation on. And then they come back to legislative recommendations at the end of the cycle, right? Rather than having everything concentrated. So I think that's one thing that would help clarify for me of like where to put energy and effort, of like if there was a subcommittee on sort of some of the issues. For example, we talk about a workforce development or biomass or funding, resource things. There are 3 committees on that. Everyone on the council could pick one, because I think the whole goal of the council, when I read the legislation is to make recommendations to the legislature and governor, right? I think that's what Katie was saying, like we've expanded that a little bit of developing tools and like being a resource for people outside of just making recommendations.
I think
So
that's it's definitely something to think about, Brett. But I'm also wondering if you're going to if all these subcommittees make recommendations. I think one thing about the legislative committee, and everyone's always welcome, and we always bring feedback, and sometimes we have guests that bring some feedback. I mean, it's not like it's an exclusive thing. It's everyone's welcome to join or come, and we have a pretty consistent group. It's just if the subcommittees have a lot of deeper knowledge, we're gonna have to make sure the legislative committee understands that what's the why and the deeper knowledge, and we'd have to rebuild the process about how we would get those brought in. So that it's not last minute when we're like, wait a minute, what's all of this? And not, because we have worked so hard to backward plan so that we have enough time, because we have probably 4 to 5 deliberations. And it's it's a very painful, it's painstakingly detailed right now, because we're still trying to, what is it going to work with all the lack of funding? And so there's 4 or 5 sessions, and we're every 2 weeks we're taking off this Friday because Courtney's gone, but it's not just like recommendations, we rubber stamp them. And then we try to make a very comprehensive list so that we do bring it back to the full council. And that's really where I think the legislation means, is that we bring it back to the full council, and that's where the full council decides. But I think that ideas could definitely be brought, but we're going to have a lot of time and built into that to bring those forward to understand the debate, because I think it would also take a lot of staff capacity to go back to those other subcommittees to have the staff who understand the fiscal notes, the legislative process. They'd have to go to all these meetings to make sure you guys don't, say, well, hey, let's start this whole new program. Well, what does that mean? So I see some complications there that could be duplicative, because if you have that person go to each subcommittee meeting, that would be 4 times the meetings when they come to that meeting, and we kind of hash that out in those 4 or 5 deliberations and get those updates. We also, part of our committee meeting is that we're looking at legislation that comes up, and we try to throw to the full council about how we can represent or which bills we want to. And that got a little off this year because the staff didn't have the capacity to come. And so we did make those recommendations, but for some reason it didn't come into for the April meeting, because I think most of the things had already been signed or through. And so we didn't get chances of full council for kind of proving some of us especially on our bill, to keep the Forest Health Council going. I wish we had that more of the formal vote. So there's more that we do than just make recommendations. We're also trying to approve which bills we are sponsoring and who can go testify on things. And so we try to make that thing. So I want to just say, if we're going to do that, we're going to have to really make sure we build in the time so we can get those recommendations much earlier. And then with the new administration, that was one of the things, is we had to get those done by June or before June, so the current administration could start, when they start building the next year's budget, they had some things in there when they want to make this a priority. So I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I'm just trying to say there's more than just, we would do more than just kind of say, hey, here is some ideas. It's pretty, and there's some overlap. That's why I keep coming to this, because I'm listening for my ideas from what you guys are bringing about how we can, bring ideas and bring it back to that. And so I think that is something that if we're going to go that way, we'd have to backwards plan to build in that time, because we take it all the way the last few years. That last meeting, we're still scrambling to fine tune that language. So I just wanted to share that. It's not as simple maybe as just we throw recommendations at you. There's a lot of deliberation and debate on that. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
No, I appreciate that. I think I did underestimate your and I see your hand, John. I'll be brief and get to you. I think I underestimated sort of the other coordination of active legislation and like other things that the committee's doing besides recommendations. Because I think we're agreeing, I'm hearing that we're agreeing that there's a lot that goes into developing recommendation. And I think that was my suggestion of like, let's actually take that out of the current legislative committee and make subcommittees to do that, and have the legislative committee be more of an umbrella under these other work groups that help spend a lot of time developing recommendations. But yeah, I see another need for more coordination and communication around just active legislation and happenings potentially.
But I think also we're gonna, we get those recommendations. I really think the legislative committee, because we have almost 100% attendance all the time for 5 years, every 2 weeks. And it's really got a good rhythm. And if we're just gonna be thought to just come rubber stamp recommendations, we didn't have a hand in kind of maybe crafting or looking about some of the fine tuning. I think that might, I think that group is still want to be a part of the voice of what the language says and stuff. And I also just used 1310 as an example that came out of the blue that we had to scramble and come testify against to not, switch the pots and robbing Peter to pay Paul and all of that. So I just want to use that as an example that sometimes things pop up that we're not planning on. So I just wanted to flag that. Thank you.
Mhm.
And can I say I can't wait for legislative session to be over?
Thank you so much. I'm hearing your concerns and I have a couple of responses, but I want to hear what John has to say first.
Yeah, I just want to speak from like a federal worker. If you label all of them legislative committees, we're not going to be able to be involved other than to be, as like a input because we can't be involved in it. So I guess my point is being on like a leveraging committee like we have now and doing the things that we've done. That's the place for like a federal worker. Whereas, Jody's um committee, I've been there to give my advice and to give my knowledge, but I can't be involved in that kind of stuff. So I just be leery of what we're asking here. If every committee is going to be legislative, then it's kind of lose our spot a little bit, not completely, but it gets a little walking the tightrope type of act. That's my comment.
Thank you. Yeah, that's
Good
a
point.
perspective that I will make sure to share back to Courtney as well. So kind of to continue the discussion on what both of you have said, something that Amy Moyer had shared with me, and it really resonated with me as far as picturing what this would look like. And I don't want to speak for her, but this is my interpretation of what she was suggesting. And I think Brett's vision has kind of aligned with this, is like the legislative committee, the strength of that committee that's really amazing, that like it goes way over my head, is like the knowledge of the legislative process, and yeah, all of that back planning that you guys do, and understanding fiscal notes and tracking what's going on, and all of that stuff is so important. And any legislative recommendations that we end up having definitely need to go through that. When I picture subject matter committees, I think the value that we see in that is that they can do whatever that subject needs. So like if we have a workforce committee, maybe it ends up being a legislative recommendation, but maybe it's creating a workforce development guide or something like what the Forest Resilience Planning Guide was. And so it's not necessarily saying that every one of these committees is going to come up with legislative recommendations, but it's the idea that if we have a really focused group of experts who are able to dive really deep into that over the course of however many months they need to, then they can come up with whatever needs to be done. And so I think Amy had framed it as the legislative committee would be almost like a steering committee and can kind of help us prioritize what we want these different subject matter expert committees to focus on. And, there would be a lot of coordination between those. But that way, there's just a little bit more clarity over what can be done and what needs to be done. And we don't feel like we're locked into this group can only do this group can only do this, because I think this committee has been dealt a really broad um, focus area and then really narrow things that we can actually do. So I don't know if that resonates. Amy is so articulate and she really explained it in a way that made a lot of sense to me. But yeah, so I guess my short answer is like they wouldn't just be coming up with legislative recommendations, but that would be one thing that they could do.
But I think that's really important to be clear about that, because I think John's point is a good point. If you're going to start talking about making legislative recommendations, that's way different. And I think before we start going down this path of it sounds like you already have discussions, and I want to warn all of us about the Attorney General saying we can't do more than even two of us talking without declaring that could be violation of open meetings. And for me, that's very sensitive being elected. But I just wanted to say that it feels like people are making decisions about the legislative committee restructuring without talking and bringing this up with the legislative committee. And I think that's kind of also something to be fair to those folks who've invested years of coming every 2 weeks, and maybe getting their feedback too, as well, in the Full Force Health Council. It sounds like you and Amy have kind of talked about this, but I don't think that, I want to be fair to everyone that's invested a lot of time on the Forest Health Council, and especially in the legislative committee, that they get to have a voice in what they think as well. I do think it's a good idea to have some that can focus and maybe dive deeper in some of these talks. But you all have had people come to your committee that have brought subject matter experts and brought some ideas that other folks haven't had access to. So I want to say both have had some, good things. But you had the Utah group and all that stuff. So I think it's important. I don't want to make this more confusing by every committee is bringing up recommendations, and then what's the structure? One of the legislative committees says that one's not going to work this year. What's that? You know what I'm saying? What kind of tension is that? And I think we have to be very clear and specific so we don't create we have such a consensus built, very collaborative group. I don't want to build any systems or processes in that creates any kind of tension. And that's really been happening a lot with other committees because of shrinking resources, and folks have competing priorities. They're all important priorities, but they're competing because there's not enough capacity or funding. And I want to be very cautious about as we proceed forward, because we also might have some recommendations coming from Mountain Pine Beetle, and I know what that looks like. And there's a lot of competing priorities and tensions there. And we had a big long meeting that I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to be on the meeting on time because of the time change. So this has all been bounced around my head. And I want to just say, I think the value of the Forest Health Council is just this consensus building where everyone's working together and we're bringing ideas and building consensus. And I want to be very cautious. I belong to 3 different county organizations, county commissioner organizations. One is consensus built, the other one is consensus built, and the other one is a majority vote. And it's very competitive, and there's a lot of backroom dealings and strategy about how we're going to overtake this vote or do this vote. And the other two is 1 or 2 people really have a concern of consensus building. It could really change the direction of the feedback. So I just want to say that, I'm in meetings all the time and they're all different. And I would say the ones that really build trust and relationships and true collaboration are the ones that are maybe a little bit more clear and not so much as overlapping. So I just want to bring that up. And I'm not trying to be dragging my heels. I just wanted to just make sure whatever going forward, that it's just not, it sounds like a small group of people are changing how this is all going to look. And I want to make sure the Full Force Health Council and the Legislative Committee gets a voice. Thanks.
No, thank you. Please don't apologize. This is exactly the discussion that I want to have. And I am so appreciative of the Legislative Committee, and I hope it does not come across as us having backdoor conversations. That is not what's happening at all.
I think it kind of does, because when you're talking with Courtney about it and Amy, it just kind of, because we haven't heard anything like that from Courtney and Allison.
This was on past
we haven't heard that at all. And so I just feel that's what's kind of made me a little sensitive about it, because that would be nice since she also staffs our committee, that we would even have a heads up. That's the conversations you guys have been having. And so I think that's kind of what also I'm just trying to understand and make sure that everyone's a part of any kind of direction going forward. And probably there'll be a lot more conversations before we have any of this going forward in August, because we are going to try to take a few a couple weeks off or a couple of meetings off in June just to help everyone have a break after this really rough legislative session. So we probably wouldn't start talking about this till July. And that only gives us maybe 2 meetings to talk about this before August. And so I just wanted to kind of flag that. I mean, it might be something we want to have a little more discussion about as a legislative committee. Thanks.
Yeah, so Amy's comments were in the Forest Health Council meeting last month. But Courtney and I were talking about this committee, and I think we're getting a little bit off topic. Again, I want to talk about the future of this committee, and then we've been having ongoing discussions in the full council about what the bigger picture looks like. And so I was trying to provide some of that as context for like, you know, if we are to sunset this committee, there is a lot of momentum. That momentum will not be lost. We foresee really good things happening with our ideas at some point in the future, whatever that looks like. So I don't want us in this committee to try to be figuring out what the next steps for the full council is. And I think this is probably my fault for getting us looking too far ahead. Um, so yeah, let's table the discussion about the bigger picture Forest Health Council. If other people have comments, I don't want to like just cut off our discussion, but I think we're getting a little bit too big picture. And I think we should probably focus on the future of the Leveraging Resources Committee because that is the committee at hand. That's what Courtney and I have been talking about. Um, and my overall point for this committee being, I think if we were to sunset this and make sure that the work we've done has good momentum behind it, um, I think we could use our resources elsewhere. Does anyone else have initial thoughts? And maybe we let it simmer. We can think more on it. But this is really good discussion. I'm furiously taking notes over here to make sure that we bring all these into our next discussion too.
No, I guess I'll just say I appreciate this conversation a lot. I think for me, we put a lot of work into the Forest Resilience Planning Guide. We published it. We're doing activities now. And it's sort of a question of kind of what's next. And as I've been thinking about that myself, I've been thinking about this committee and like, it's good to learn about what work's doing. It's good to learn about these other things that are happening. But I want to make sure, like, what are we doing? Where are we having impact in this committee? And sometimes it just takes time to find the next thing, right? And that's okay. I'm willing to give it a little time. But I think that's also, I've personally had some reflections. And like I've said, we've diverted resources. Laura Hickey, I see you're on. We talked earlier about how CFRI is contracting with you, and we're working on the resilience planning guide and making trainings and tutorials and getting it out there. I've pivoted to doing more of that than thinking about sort of the statewide Forest Health Council kind of role of this committee. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, like Katie said, of what's this? Why am I here?
Yeah, and I've had similar thoughts. So I guess maybe just taking an initial temperature if we have, I mean, we could have endless paths in front of us. Right now, I'm kind of seeing the two main paths as like we keep this committee going and we keep trying to figure out what is it we're doing here, and it may take even more time. Or we sunset this committee and we let the Forest Health Council as a bigger council determine where we want to have impact next. And so I guess if those are the two paths, do people have initial leanings one way or the other? Like, where would you go if you had to walk down a path today? That's not a rhetorical question.
I Hi, and sorry I I've been jumping in and out. I was in the car and so listening in and obviously joined a little late here. Thank you for Brett referencing that this committee knows about the other kind of training work. My question is for those two paths, is there procedurally any difference or like a so if this committee were to sunset and the Forest Health Council identifies a topic that could have sat under this committee, is there like a larger kind of activation energy or like a procedural hoop to jump through to get a new committee started, or is it pretty kind of simple to start a new committee?
That is a good question, and one that I think the Forest Health Council administrators are figuring out right now. I don't know the answer to that. Like, I don't know if it's the council does a vote or if it's like, I don't know what that looks like. That's my short answer. But we are figuring it out, and I think they will know the answer to that within a short timeline.
I guess I'll just add, I think, some of the things that Commissioner Shattuck McNally brought up, she made some good points. And then also just understanding, like, John Ring from BLM, they wouldn't be able to participate if it's called something else. I think the conversation has been started, and I think for me, I need to really think about, what that really means. And I think it would be helpful too if you could provide some more information as, the question that was just asked. If it does sunset, what does that look like in the future to start a new committee? I don't know. I feel like there's still work to be done. And but I don't know. I mean, I think this is just such a big topic in all the little things that we've been doing that I don't understand why we'd want to sunset. I think I would like to understand more because you referenced it would be able to take those resources, probably meaning your time and others can focus somewhere else. So what are those priorities? Has there been, a conversation around what are their priorities, and maybe because this is the priority, maybe we need to sunset this committee in order to align those resources to those priorities. Maybe that would help me.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And um, I don't know, maybe I can put something together or something that's a little more clear.
Well, I guess too, just for us to understand, like, why now? Why is the conversation being had that this needs or should or could, or what is the feeling of it sunsetting? I think that would help too.
Yeah, I think where this is coming from for me as the chair is like, I feel like I've had some lack of clarity on our direction. Like we did the forest resilience planning guide, we had so much momentum, and then it's kind of been a little bit of stop and go since then. And so just trying to figure out like, is this too much stop and go? Like that we haven't had clarity by this point. Um, or is this fine? And like Brett said, sometimes things just take time to find a direction. And so I don't want to prescribe anything. I want to have this conversation with everyone and see where everyone's feeling. So, and it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty for all of us. So,
I think it's given the state of resources. So just like thinking about timeline, beginning of 2025, Forest Resilience Planning Guide was published, and also funding became such a big question. So the resources at hand that this group talks about leveraging became a little less collaborative just out of necessity. It was like, we got to make sure we know what we have, if we have it, how long we're going to have it kind of thing. Those were the conversations that individual partner organizations were having. So I can see that the external, like the conversations that are happening everywhere, were less about probably how do we leverage our resources when they're so slim, I guess. So I just, my point really is that I think there's a lot of external changes that probably have influenced the lack of clarity, Katie. Like it's not, um, there was a lack of clarity among everyone. And so, especially about leveraging resources. So it was like, do we have enough to collaborate? Do we need to really focus like internally right now? And how do we make this work? Um, and so I would just acknowledge the outside influence of those conversations as well on all the members of this committee.
Yeah, thank you for that broader context.
I'm sorry, just I missed that. Sorry, the staff had a question. What's the outside influence again?
Oh, Laura's just pointing out that, or Laura, you can summarize your own words. I don't need to speak for you.
I was just mentioning that there's been a lot of lack of clarity about resources among individual organizations as well. So when it comes to trying to find clarity in how to leverage resources when there's a lot of, or when there's a lack of clarity about those resources, it's makes sense to me. It's logical to me.
Yeah,
So,
maybe the lack of clarity in this committee is a reflection of the lack of clarity in the entire forest world right now.
I also think it would have been something we talked about in the legislative committee is trying to also, when we talk about legislative resources, was also trying to understand what the fire commission was doing because they actually were working on a workforce bill too. And they got funding in an innovative way, which would have been something we were also trying to do as the Forest Health Council. And it would have been really great if we had had that communication and leveraging working on that piece of legislation because they're trying to keep that rolling. And it feels like we're almost competing now. And so, but they're trying to do the same thing we're trying to do, right? Is get these youth into programs. And so I think that's another point of who's supposed to be kind of managing that. So, and who's looking, how do we keep that all straight? So just something is that leveraging resources, that part of legislative? Do we need to coordinate more with the full Forest Health Council? Where they're bringing what they're kind of pushing and seeing if there's any overlap or any blending or braiding of efforts or funding. And I don't know where we do that, but that I think as we're going forward, it would be opportunities to show when they say no daylight between us. I think that is one we should be able to try to address. So we're working on similar things. If they're doing similar things like workforce, which they were doing, which we are also trying to do. And I think that's something to try to highlight as well.
Mm-hmm.
I came back a little feisty from this conference, if you can't tell. Because I just have a lot of stories from the victims and stuff from some of these major mega fires that have happened since our big fires. And it's a lot of old policy work from not current, but like from the last decisions made from the last 10 years or more for some of these communities and even their states, lack of political will to get certain things done that cost lives and cost landscapes. And so I'm just a little on fire today to try to make sure any decisions policy wise or direction wise we're making are the right ones, because I don't want to ever be one of those like, well, they should have never done that, because I certainly heard an earful from the community members that are now dealing with those consequences. So forgive my my little energy there, because it just kind of is kept me up a few nights just trying to think about all those victims and the repercussions of that. And so just something that's weighing on me now was we're making these choices and lack of resources and funding. So thanks.
Yeah, again, no need to apologize. Energy is good. We are all passionate in this group. That's why I love this group. Well, this is great. I'm glad that we've had a really energetic discussion about this today. There's a lot to think about, and I knew that we were not going to come to a decision on this today. So I was floating an idea, and I think maybe in preparation for the next meeting, we can kind of learn more about what each of those two paths that I outlined might look like. Um, and yeah, that can help inform further discussion next time. So it's 12:56. Does anyone have any final thoughts that they want to share, or anything that I should be thinking about in between our next meeting, or that we all should be thinking about in between our next meeting that we haven't talked about already?
Just wanted to share again, and I know I talked a lot today, but like I said, I'm coming back pretty on a mission. Once again, and we had the big long all day mountain pine beetle, so I was double, triple duting it on Friday during this conference. And it's again, I wanted you all to know the Forest Health Council vision, and that 30-year vision is really being brought up and kind of reminded in the mountain pine beetle to make sure it's kind of aligned there. And I wanted to make sure you all know it's nice to see that when we talk about leveraging resources overlapping. It's really important to see that. And we're really working on immediate outcomes, midterm and long term. And so I think that's also something for us to think about, how we can have long-term thoughts and ideas. If you have something you want to ruminate on or think about over the next few months, because I don't think we'll really get to the long-term ones for a few, at least 3 months. But I think that's another place for us as our subcommittees or full Forest Health Council, how that fits into our vision and how that might be, especially with the nursery coming online and stuff. There's some things I think we need to see our role in there as well. So it's not just the mountain pine beetles kind of separate, but how we might be able to add into that discussion. So just something I just thought you all might want to think about in your spare time. So thank you.
The last thing I'll just say is, as you're thinking about this from the perspective of a facilitator and someone who like builds collaborative governance and designs collaborative structures, is the title of this committee is leveraging resources. And even in this part of the conversation, I've heard workforce resources, learning resources, financial resources, time resources, and whether you're like a lumper of all resources or a splitter of all resources, that's 4 topics that you all could easily be focusing on, and could each be really successful as their own subcommittees. So just think about, navigating that distinction among resource types and how this committee would go about figuring out which resource to focus on and when, and things like that. That might be a framing that could be helpful for the Forest Health Council too, in the pathway of like asking them for priorities. It's like, what kind of resources do you want us to really focus on right now?
I like the lumping or splitting framing.
That's from my ecological background, or like evolutionary biology, a lumper or a splitter. Do you decide a new species, or you're like, it's all the same thing.
Awesome. Well, that could help guide future discussions. Well, it is 1 o'clock. I appreciate the closing thoughts. And again, I appreciate the energetic discussion. We'll have all of this in our minds, and we'll keep working to figure it out. Thanks, everybody. Meeting adjourned. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Bye.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.